Hello and welcome to A Kind Voice on Employment, Opportunity, and Innovation. I'm your host, David Levins, and our show is part of the bigger mission of A Kind Voice, which is to make our world a kinder, more connected place, one conversation at a time. And to do that, we facilitate conversations where people share their kind voice, the good within them, with our listening audience. And they tell these beautiful stories about movies, books, innovative things in business. And tonight's guest is really at the core of what A Kind Voice is all about, is sharing. I have Barbara McFadden Allen with us, and she's the Executive Director for the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, or CIC, which allows colleges and universities to cooperate and share. So I'm thrilled to have Barbara on the show to tell us about all the good stuff the CIC is doing. Welcome to the program, Barbara.
Oh, thank you so much, David. It's a real pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. Can you give us an overview of what the CIC is?
Sure. The CIC is a consortium of 15 American research universities. We are the 14 member universities of the Big Ten Athletic Conference and the University of Chicago. And our universities have worked together for, I think now, almost 58 years.
Wow.
To work toward the common good. Yeah, exactly. It's a very long-standing partnership, longer than many marriages, I might point out. And so we were established by the presidents of these universities in order to help the institutions work together to solve common problems, to save money by working together on contracts and other services, and to think about how we can apply our research apparatus to solve big and vexing problems in the regions where our universities reside. So essentially, we're the academic counterpart to the athletic conference. We compete on the field on Saturday, and we cooperate in the classroom on Monday, helping our universities save money so we can be more efficient and effective in our teaching and learning enterprise.
That's a very interesting analogy with the athletic conferences and the connection there. Is there any event or activity that really resonated with you, that really captures the spirit of what the CIC does?
Yeah, actually several. It's a really fun, interesting, and exciting place to work, and a really wonderful time to be working, I think, in American higher education particularly. But one of the projects that I think has touched me most deeply, mainly because it's my own personal background, is the work that our university libraries have accomplished together. Together, these 15 research universities have 111 million book volumes in their libraries. So it's, as you can hear, an enormous, quite a rich and enormous and impressive resource. Our university libraries work very effectively together to share those volumes so that if I'm a student or a faculty member at Penn State University, I can get the materials from the University of Minnesota or Nebraska within 24 hours if I need a book or another item that's in the library collection. But we're also working to digitize about 10 million of those book volumes and hold them in a common repository, so that as a citizen in the CIC universities, as a student or faculty member, you'll be able to browse these millions of volumes digitally and access the physical volumes. And it helps our institutions make smarter decisions about their library services. It helps them invest in a way that maximizes the resources available for the students and faculty, and again builds what is arguably the biggest library in the world, actually. The libraries also work together. They work together also to save space. I mean, it takes a lot of buildings to hold 111 million book volumes. So they do what they can to coordinate some of those holdings. We have a shared print storage facility that has 3 miles of shelving for our universities to share, so that shelving is available for them to use collectively and they don't have to use it individually. So it saves them space, gives them access to basically 15 times as many book volumes as they would have. And to me, that's again, a way our universities have been able to overlook their competitive nature and come together to create something that no single institution could physically afford to, or in fact afford to, in terms of purchasing that many library volumes. So that makes me feel good to know our organization has helped the institutions do that.
It's beautiful to hear stories of cooperation like that really spread the knowledge and make it meaningful on the individual level. Now, I just looked at your website, and there's an awesome number of programs that you guys are involved with. Being the executive director, what was your background that got you to the position you're at now?
I'm actually a librarian. I worked in libraries for several years before joining the CIC staff. I've worked there 20 years now. And they recruited me to help build a library program across the Big Ten universities, which I was very happy to do. And libraries, as you may know, are places that naturally are inclined to collaboration. No library can have every item that every patron might want. And so the notion of collaboration, sharing, and resource development is something embedded in librarians as part of the profession. So when I was hired into this position, I assumed that all the universities would want to work together toward a common aim. And, of course, that was true in the libraries, but I pretty quickly found out it's not naturally occurring in many other disciplines in the universities. So I think, again, I came in specifically because I had a library background, and that's what they were looking for. But I think personally that experience that I had as a library professional gave me the understanding that you have to cooperate in order to accomplish your aims when you're working across complex organizations. And personally, I found it inspiring and interesting to work across this group of universities. You may know them, University of Michigan and Michigan State and Indiana and Northwestern and Illinois, et cetera. So it was really exciting to think about what could I see personally that could be done collaboratively that others perhaps could not. And it was inspiring and fun for me. And I think, again, that my library background made it seem possible to me. I may have been a little naive.
It's a very neat thing. Now, how does a new activity get started within the CIC? I guess one person at one university must have an idea for something. How does that happen?
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking about this the other day at work. In some ways, it's sort of like a neural network, right? So you have these institutions working together. We have a sort of backbone of collaborative activity, the library services. As I said, we share a common information technology infrastructure. We have some other fundamental pieces that sort of knit our institutions together in this interesting way and provide the resources to make substantive collaboration possible. But the way we, again, launch an idea does look like this neural network where a faculty member on one campus, faculty member or staff, sees some common problem or issue that they think could be better addressed working together. Like by working together, we would solve the problem better, faster, and cheaper. And so they'll typically consult with their peers across the institutions. We manage email lists and other kinds of community platforms for sharing information. You might share the question or idea on that network. Maybe a couple of them agree, yes, that's an interesting way to approach that problem, and they'll bring it to the attention of us at the headquarters, and we'll do an assessment about, so is this going to be a large investment of time, energy, and money, or is this simply sharing information? And depending on the answer to that, we'll take it up to the board, and the board of the CIC is the provosts of our member universities. We'll consult with them and determine what kind of investment is necessary. So to make that more concrete, for example, the chief information officers of our universities were in a meeting together, and they were just doing the kinds of information sharing that you probably do when you get together with your peers. You know, what what's bothering you at work right now? What are the big issues you're working on? And in that conversation, it became clear that a number of the campuses were going to have to invest in a large-scale sort of fiber network to support their information technology. And they started talking about how much that investment would be. And pretty quickly, they came to realize if they made that investment at the same time, they could all save money, but they could build a network that was going to be essentially 15 times faster than any single institution could. So they began to look at this together. We helped figure out how that project might roll out across the campuses, helped with decision-making on the campuses, and then helped put in place the contracts for the actual technology service. So again, it was just, in that case, somebody needed to solve a problem on one campus. They were going to have to get contracts for a new fiber optic network. And by thinking it through together, they suddenly realized that by leveraging the cost of a single network across the partners, again, it was going to help them save money. And who doesn't like to do that? That's just smart. But as importantly, deliver this network that now physicists on our member university campuses can send data live to the Large Hadron Collider experiment in CERN, Switzerland, something that not all research universities can do. Cases, again, they're just trying to solve, they're just trying to address some sort of policy problem. But again, person gets an idea, brings it to their peers, talks with us at the headquarters, and then we take it up through our board.
It's a very interesting process, and it really gets a lot of people involved, which is very, very cool. Now, just to get a picture of what the CRC is, do you guys have your own separate offices where the meetings are held, or are the meetings held on the different college campuses?
Oh, right. Yeah, good question. Well, we are an enormous community. First of all, I should point that out. We have almost 600,000 students on our campuses, and we cover 11 states. We are in Nebraska to the west, all the way to New Jersey in the east. So we have almost 600,000 students and 44,000 faculty members. So it's quite a giant enterprise. We have a staff of 23 that we're housed in Champaign, Illinois, and we do a mix of meetings. Most of our meetings take place in Chicago. It's an easy location for folks from our campuses to fly in. But as you can imagine, we do many, many meetings by conference call or virtually by video for our campuses. But we have over 100 groups of peers that convene together from across the campuses on a fairly regular basis. So the staff and I meet. Oh gosh, we're in meetings, say 8-10 days a month, really meeting with different.
You stay very connected to your clients. Now, we need to take our first break, and we'll be right back.
A lot has changed from when Nola Osh started school until the time she finished.
When I received my diploma, it was a big to-do.
At 95 years young, Nola became the world's oldest college graduate.
If we don't concentrate on our ages, we go ahead and do things as if we were younger.
So no matter how old you are, live life and pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
Hi, this is Corey from Runa, and at Runa we make a number of different beverages, all from one leaf called guayusa. Guayusa is a naturally caffeinated leaf from the Ecuadorian Amazon. Indigenous peoples in that area have been brewing and drinking it like tea for thousands of years. All the guayusa that we sell is certified organic, fair trade, and non-GMO. And because guayusa is naturally packed with caffeine and antioxidants, it gives you this really nice, clear-headed, clean, and focused energy. We think of ourselves as a lifestyle brand because guayusa fuels you in doing whatever it is in your life that you need or love to do. So if it's one of those days where you need to sit at your desk for 8 hours and pound out some project or report, then guayusa is perfect for fueling you and doing that work. Alternatively, if it's a beautiful day out and you're going to do yoga in the park or you're going for a bike ride in the woods, then guayusa is perfect for fueling that as well. It gives you this amazing full-body, wholesome energy and helps you feel fully alive. And that's why we call our company Runa. Runa is a Quechua word that actually means fully alive or fully living human being. We're sold in natural, organic food stores across the country. We're also in Whole Foods nationwide, and you can always find a store near you on our website with our store locator at runa.org. Go out to a store near you, grab a box or a bottle or a can, and crack one open and try one today.
Kind Voice Radio.
And welcome back to Kind Voice on Employment, Opportunity, and Innovation. We're here with Bob McFadden Allen from the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, the CIC. Welcome back to the show, Barbara.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned you guys have been doing this for 58 years. It's a very long time. How did it get started? Was it one person's idea to start it, or how did that happen?
Yeah, well, the genesis story is that the presidents of the Big Ten universities had gathered together just back in 1957, I believe, maybe 58. They gathered together at The Ohio State University for the investiture of a new president. And apparently they were all at dinner, and one of them, Herman Wells, who was then at Indiana University, observed that with all these powerful university presidents sitting around, it was rather a shame that they were there just to really talk about the athletic programs and, seat this new president. Wouldn't it be a better use of their time to think about how they could work together to build the best universities in America? And at the time, there was a great competition between research universities that were situated on the East Coast, so the Ivy League primarily, and then on the West Coast, the University of California system. And then here was this group of institutions in, at the time, the U.S. Midwest. And again, Herman Wells saying, couldn't we work together and therefore be more effective, have greater impact on our region, and be more competitive in our research on a national level? And they agreed. They had their first meeting, and their first official act was to invite the University of Chicago to join. Second act was to establish the provost, those are the chief academic officers, as the board. And I believe the third thing they did was to buy a big telescope together down in South America. So sort of proving right away that they could save money together and buy this interesting piece of scientific equipment. And so Herman Wells was, I think, the chancellor at Indiana for 30 years and really over time provided a lot of leadership and energy to this. What we find, and you'll find this too, David, I think if you're involved in any kind of cooperation, whether, again, it's a personal relationship you have or in your community or in other kinds of work, that everybody starts out with high hopes, right? You wouldn't establish a partnership unless you did have high hopes. But it can quickly, be difficult. It's hard to do collaborative work or to work cooperatively with any group of partners. And so sometimes it takes a persistence and a patience over many years, and you really have to have people who can maintain the vision in spite of inevitable disappointments that we all have in cooperation. So I think Herman Wells and the other presidents were quite visionary in this regard.
It's very interesting stuff, and I have a few follow-up questions for it. But in my experience of starting cooperatives, I find a mission statement to be quite useful, a mission statement that one takes to heart, and it kind of generates the positive attitudes needed to sustain the activity when things go wrong, when things don't grow as you plan. You can rely on, this is the mission statement, and it's a journey, and we don't expect everything to work. That's not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Do you have like a core value or a mission statement that keeps you guys moving forward?
Yeah, what a wonderful question. And you're right. Having inspirational direction to the organization is just helpful for everyone and can sustain you. We have it to be our mission to, as the headquarters, to build the most responsive and effective framework for academic collaboration in the United States. And so that's something we take very seriously, putting in place the means and mechanisms to allow our institutions to collaborate. I guess it's a fancy way of saying that we are going to set the table, right, for our universities to sit down and begin this important work. Our vision is that these 15 universities will be the most recognized leaders in American research and higher education because of their effective cooperation. And that gives meaning to us every day, that it reminds us that our job as a headquarters is, again, to put in place the systems that enable the cooperation from our campuses, that we're always there to serve those campuses and their larger goals. And I can't really imagine working in an environment myself that doesn't really involve striving towards the kinds of goals that our universities set in place to educate, to inform, to create new knowledge. Thomas Jefferson described this at the University of Virginia as seeing to the public happiness, and those are real inspiring notions to us.
Yeah, I like that, the public happiness. It sounds like you have a lot of clarity with your values and how you embody them. That's the key thing. Now, I understand how you initiate lots of activities. Are you also like a repository for best practices, the best way to do things on different universities? If one of your university has a really good way of doing that, do they share that with the CIC, and does it get spread to the other universities that way?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, a while ago I mentioned that one of the things we do is develop, support, and sustain communities across the institutions, mainly by functional area of the institution. So just last week, the people who manage faculty leadership development were having a conversation about the faculty review process on the campuses. And so they quickly gathered all the common protocols for faculty review, identified which campuses have the most effective, and they had this really intense sharing so that they could share it with their decision makers, but also begin looking at their own policies to manage them. And this happens every week, probably 5 different times. It helps our universities, as you just said, identify a good or a best practice on one campus and then quickly disseminate it across the other institutions. It helps them solve, problems and implement best practices really, really quickly, because they have this partnership that it's like being in a family, really. It's always there. Again, it's this fabric, like a family is, right, where you don't talk to everybody every week or every month, but they're there and you can call upon them when you need them. And that's the way I think that they look at each other. And it's, by the way, borne out in research. There's a lot of research on corporate partnerships. There's not a lot, or I haven't found it anyway. There doesn't seem to be as much research on public partnerships. But when you look at the research on corporate partnerships, it's clear that they enter partnerships for 3 very specific reasons. One is to transfer expertise quickly among corporations. The other is to amortize the cost of actions or the procurement of services. And then the third is to leverage complementary assets. And so those are exactly the reasons our institutions do the things that they do. But in our case, the outcome is not to create money or wealth, although I suppose that could happen. But the byproduct of our collaboration is more students get more opportunities. Our education is as effective as it can be, and that our researchers and faculty have many more opportunities for the kind of work that they do.
It's tremendously interesting and powerful stuff to create a fabric like that. Now, I'm certain there's nothing exactly like what you guys do in business, but are there some organizations that do something similar in the business world, what you guys do in the academic world?
Oh, yeah, interesting. Well, I would point out there are a number of partnerships in American higher education that look very much like the work that we do at the CIC. Homer Simpson once said, no matter how good you are at something, there's always about 1 million people better. But so there's probably at least 5 or 6 American higher education consortia that do the kind of work we do at the CIC. In fact, we cooperate with them quite a lot. And there are probably something on the order of 150 organizations of all kinds serving universities. So that's a pretty rich collaborative environment, at least in the United States. On the corporate side, I don't know any in detail, primarily because many of them, aren't revealed publicly. But I know, for example, that the petroleum industry collaborates at a very high level on some of their exploration, so that a group of companies might go in to amortize the cost of a drilling or other kinds of exploration. So that would be one example. In the tech industry, there's a high level of collaboration on things like standards development, so that, you all agree on a standard so that the equipment you're building separately or creating separately can interact downstream. And those are all sort of pre-competitive, collaborative, or at least cooperative projects. But I don't know of any where the institutions involved, on the corporate side anyway, have as many and as deep and as varied a connection as we might find on the academic side or educational side. Another example. This is kind of a good one. Airlines that consolidate information on ticket sales so that you can browse them online together. That's quite an, and then they even have. They enable you, the customer, to use a variety of their lounges in airports or to combine miles. So things like that.
Boy, what a rich answer. You had a lot going on. A few follow-ups I'm going to ask after the break, but I just want to congratulate you. We never had someone working a Thomas Jefferson quote and a Holman Simpson quote on the same program. So that's a first. I appreciate that. So we're going to go to a break and hear a good news report, and we'll be right back after this report.
Tell us about the good news there is today.
This week's good news report comes from Austin, Texas.
That's right. A woman there named Stacy Zorn has been handicapped all her life. She started a car company called Community Cars, which is making a vehicle called the Kangaroo. It's like a smart car. It has a hatchback that rises from a remote control right on her wheelchair, and a ramp lowers. And then she rolls right in, and her wheelchair becomes a driver's seat, and she drives the car.
That's pretty cool.
It certainly is. And another cool thing about it is the car is an electrical vehicle. So not only is it sustainable for the handicapped driver, it's sustainable for our planet.
Wow. And what a great example of someone using their kind voice to make the world a kinder, more connected place.
It is. To see a video of this car in action, go to akindvoice.org/news. Now, you go out and make some good news this week so we can have something to report on for next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Tell us about the good news there is today. Kind Voice Radio.
And welcome back to Kind Voice on Employment, Opportunity, and Innovation. Our program is part of the bigger mission of A Kind Voice, which is to make our world a kinder, more connected place, one conversation at a time. And to do that, we need lots of kind voices joining the conversation. So if you see some good news or a part of some good news in your area and want to let us know about it, we'll share it on our good news segment. Just go to kindvoice.org/news. Barbara, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so before the break, you gave a very good answer about other organizations in the academic world that connect other universities. Now, how do you guys connect outside of the cooperative or the consortium of universities within your circle? How do you reach out to other universities and other people doing similar work to you guys to understand their best practices?
Right. Yeah, and so I'll talk a little bit about that, and also the ways in which we strive to have a greater impact on our regions and the communities in which our universities reside, because this is very, very important to us, and we want to be very intentional about the positive impact that we do have in our communities. So the first one I might mention is the following. Together, our universities engage in $11 billion of funded research every year. These are dollars that come from primarily about 50% of those dollars come from the federal government, and the other 50% comes from a mix of state government investments and corporate investments and other kinds of investments in the research enterprise. And that all goes into creating, for example, new pharmaceuticals or discoveries in engineering and medicine, or the creation of music and the written word and all sorts of contributions that might come on the research side. And we've just begun to research ourselves to see how and whether those dollars are having an impact primarily in the institution alone, in the broader community in which the university resides, within the state or within the region. And what we found on the first pass of this analysis was that these universities, these 15 universities, had investments in over 1,700 U.S. counties to service these research projects. So, for example, a faculty member at Michigan might get a $10 million grant for a chemistry-related project. And as part of that grant, she might have contracts in the state of Florida for some scientific equipment, a contract in a county in New Hampshire for software development, et cetera, et cetera. So we're now able to describe how these investments are having an impact on individuals, on companies, on the states, and on the region. And as we further drill into that information, we're seeing that many of these contracts are actually to create new businesses expressly for the purpose of serving that research project. They might be creating an entirely new kind of scientific instrument, for example, that would become the basis of a new sort of business serving many kinds of research projects. And so we're able to see in a pretty detailed way the impact that we're having on, again, the creation of new and innovative businesses, not only here in the Midwest or in the 11 states where our universities are, but across the entire nation. And I think it puts us in a position of having a better conversation with the public about the impact of these institutions and the sort of symbiotic relationship, right? These are enormous institutions. In many cases, they're like themselves small cities. And so they have a big footprint and can have a big and positive impact in the way they're operating. So that's one way that we're looking at this. A second way, so that's sort of impact. A second way is thinking together about how we can help solve a problem or address a problem in the region, and then thinking about what partners make most sense. So we're just right now in the very, very early stages of an effort around health disparities. And we have discovered that in these 11 states, we have the biggest gap in health outcomes between the highest socioeconomic spectrum and the lowest. And within these 11 states, we have then about 3 million vulnerable children in the lower socioeconomic strata that are having markedly worse health outcomes than their wealthier peers in this region. So we've reached out to the state health commissions in the 11 states and received a very, very positive response from them. And we're going to hook up researchers in health sciences, in public policy, in social sciences from our universities with the public health experts in these 11 states. We're going to take a really focused view at health outcomes for infants and children, and we hope we're going to be able to implement public policy together with these new partners. And that really was a process of, again, examining what's a problem we have in the region that no one else is going to solve or address for us, and who are the partners that make the most sense. So, again, we reached out to the states, and now we're talking with some private foundations that will hopefully fund this research. So that's, again, that's sort of another way. There's all kinds of problems that we have, and there's all kinds of opportunities every day, and part of it is the need for us, anyway, to figure out where we want to focus our attention. And then, man, it's like getting one of those magnifying glasses when you're a kid, and really shining the light to focus the energy on a particular problem. But once we do that and we sort of sort out who are the partners that can come to the table and help us solve this problem, then it's a pretty easy matter to reach out to them, and you just do what everybody does, which is you want to be a good partner and helpful partner, and you want to make it clear that you're in this to make something happen. And that's the kind of partners that we look for.
And I think that's pretty amazing that you think through all those elements to create something good, to interconnect a web that's going to create something good, that you're thinking about the outcome in advance of the project. Now, I'm trying to wrap my mind around, in the examples you mentioned, like the CIC is at the core of the project. So there are ever cases when, like, a professor at a university would just have this one issue and you guys would connect them with maybe a dean at another university and not be at the core of creating the solution, but just be a facilitator for...
Absolutely. In fact, David, yes, would you like a job at the CIC? Because you have it exactly right. I mean, sometimes the idea is so large and so complex that, you know, you have to really put in place this rather elaborate structure for managing the decisions and the leadership and all that. Other times it's simply a matter of, you know, faculty member X, as you just suggested, really just needs access to another faculty member at a lab, a very particular lab, might be at Rutgers University, might be at Indiana University. And in that case, we just do a little matchmaking, and it's a matter of introducing a couple of folks, and then we just step back. And in fact, most of the work of the CIC, even if we do get involved at a very high level in a very large-scale investment, the intent of the CIC from its founding was always that we would work together to launch the effort, but it always needed to be pushed back to the campuses to be permanently managed and run. So we have this dynamic and a culture in our headquarters office that, again, we incubate ideas and launch them and then push them back to the campuses where they're managed for the long term.
Yeah, I guess it's a real art to learn how to get things set up very quickly and then disengage so you could use your bandwidth elsewhere.
Exactly. And sometimes to know when it's not going to work. You know, so.
Do you have a lot of, like, projects in the queue where people requested things that it takes a little bit for you to get to them? Or are you guys pretty quick at turning things around when a suggestion or... That is such a good question. Because, of course, the answer is it depends. You might imagine that the more complex, expensive, and seemingly difficult the project, the slower it would be. But I have to say, the example I just gave of the Health Disparities Initiative, which is quite enormous, a problem, that actually has been achieving a velocity very quickly because there's so much energy around this. Whereas sometimes there's an idea that, in fact, only one or two faculty or administrators want to work on, and you think, sure, that we should be able to get that underway really quickly. But for many reasons, some of them political, some of them practical, it's just hard to get it out of the gate. So we try to build in at the front end enough analysis to give us an educated guess about how much effort and energy we'll be putting in. And then we try to always build in an escape clause, an exit strategy, so that if it doesn't go according to plan, if something unexpected happens that slows everything down, we can get out of the middle of it because, as you know, it's just human nature. Once you start working on something and you've invested a lot of time and energy, it's really, really hard for a lot of people to pull the plug, even though they need to. You know, you just need to cut your losses and say, well, that did not work well. So we try to be actually quite disciplined, you know, about declaring either victory or defeat and, you know, moving on. But as you say, I mean, we do, at any one time, we have many projects going on. As I said, we have 26 staff members, I think, and any one of us, you know, at any one time probably has 2 or 3 projects that are really, really going fast, successfully. You know, we can hardly keep up, and we've always have a portfolio of things that either aren't working well or working slower than we expect. So it's an ebb and flow. It sounds like you have a really efficient operation. I like the vocabulary you used, and I want to get into that a little bit more, but we need to take a final break, so we'll be right back at the D's Message.
The There's nothing wrong with reaching out when you need. I'll be there for you, and maybe you can be for me. With a kind voice, a few kind words, an open ear for when you need to be heard, a warm heart, we can make that choice to be a kind voice, a few kind.
Hi, my name is Azim Kamisa. In January of 1995, while delivering pizzas to help him through college, my son Tariq was senselessly murdered by a 14-year-old gang member. Tariq was a wonderful young man who could light up the room with a joke. In the search to relieve my pain, I needed to find a way to use the sadness from this tragedy to help others. So by the end of 1995, after months of agonizing pain and introspection, I chose to start an organization to help stop kids from killing kids. And I reached out in forgiveness to the killer's grandfather and guardian in brotherhood. We have worked together, speaking to over 1 million youth and adults all over the world in bringing the lessons of peace and nonviolence for 20 continuous years. Now I'm asking you to add your kind voice to our efforts. For a peaceful world, we all need to embrace peace and forgiveness. We need you as a peacemaker, having forgiven the past, any enemies, and at last having forgiven yourself for any wrongdoing. To learn more, go to my website, azimkamisa.com. There you'll find my story in a trilogy of books, From Murder to Forgiveness, followed by From Forgiveness to Fulfillment, followed by From Fulfillment to Peace, as well as a download for a free guided meditation dedicated to your peace. Again, the website is azimkamisa.com, which is azimkamisa.com. It is indeed time for peace.
A Kind Voice Radio.
And welcome back to Kind Voice on Employment, Opportunity, and Innovation. I'm your host, David Levins, and we're here with Barbara McFadden Allen of the CIC talking about the great work they're doing. So, Barbara, before we left, you mentioned a lot of neat words, and I think every organization has its vocabulary to describe its work. Are there any words that describe your operating concepts that would kind of shed a little light on what you guys do?
Well, obviously, collaboration and cooperation. We're maybe surprisingly big on metrics. These are, or benchmarks, these are measures to determine whether or not we're meeting expectations and project goals. I think clarity, focus, constantly trying to focus ourselves and discipline ourselves to address those projects and activities that will be, most important to our universities. Words like opportunity, access, efficiencies, knowledge. Those are all really, really important to us as we think about the work that we're engaged in.
And maybe more than word, I think what intrigued me was the concept of how you seem to look at a project and you're looking at the overall good it can do, but is one of the parameters how much of your bandwidth you're spending on the project, how quickly you could get in and out of the project.
Absolutely. And how sophisticated our, headquarters is going to be in addressing the problem. Sometimes these are problems that really are best addressed back on the campuses where there's more expertise in many cases. And then it's our job to be watchful as a staff and know our own limits. And then knowing, okay, that is not a project that we would necessarily implement, but what we are very good at and what we are, in fact, expert at is making the connections back on the campuses, knowing which people to take this idea to and how to work the idea through the sort of governance and leadership structure on those campuses. So that's really, really important, the sensitivity to not being in a position of telling our universities what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. It's being their partner in identifying the best things to do. And I had a moment of clarity in listening once to some economists talking about why people do cooperate and collaborate with others. And one professor noted that there's a sharing principle in economics, and I can't remember the name of this principle, but it's the following, or I understood it as the following. When you live in a house with a number of people, everybody might share one dishwasher, right? Because that just makes sense. You wouldn't have a dishwasher in every room. You wouldn't have 3 dishwashers in different rooms. It just makes sense to have one dishwasher or one washing machine. But everybody has their own toothbrush. So when you're looking at, again, a community, whether in this case it's a group of universities or for any other kind of work, understanding that, problems can be parsed that way. You can look at it and simply, say, hey, am I trying to get everybody to share a toothbrush? Because they're not going to do that. There's no motivation. But if I'm trying to get everybody to share a dishwasher or something, some more complex piece of equipment that's too expensive for them, well, then I'm going to get their buy-in. So, again, being sensitive about what our role is versus what the role of the institutions is and what they're trying to accomplish, and then for us to be smart about when to direct their attention, because all cooperation is hard, and there is a cost to every collaboration. So it's knowing that what you're going to produce is worth the time, energy, and investment that you're asking of anybody.
Very, very interesting about what you said about parsing things efficiently to get the most efficient deal. It reminded me of something Michael Lewis said in his book, The Blind Side, about football, that the football field is a very tightly strung economy, that a team may have a best tight end and you could double team him, but if you do, that it'll open up something in another area of the field.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. Now, I also like what you said about moments of clarity. That often I read things, and in Organizing a Kind Voice, when I read things in John Steinbeck that kind of gave me a moment of clarity. That said, there should be an organization called the Kind Voice that does this. He just, to me, he speaks to me and says things very eloquently. Are there any books that's really have spoken to you, that given you these moments of clarity as it pertains to your work?
How what a fantastic question. Well, as I mentioned way back at the beginning of the interview, I actually am a librarian by training and discipline. So, as you might imagine, I read a lot, voraciously, some might say, and I have always returned to Shakespeare's works. I find that I find inspiration in the way he expresses himself and in the range of human emotion and human experience that he's able to capture. So, for me, that has always inspired my own thinking and my own the way I try to approach my own life. But I don't go around quoting Shakespeare directly all the time. I can't say.
Probably healthy. Yeah, kind of applying the ideas indirectly and making them your own is probably the essence of using past wisdom. Now, we're coming to the end. Is there anything I haven't asked that you think would be useful for people to know about the CIC?
I think that what we found is if we can be inspiring to anyone who hopes to get a group of rather large, unwieldy, and extremely complicated organizations to do something together, we hope to be that inspiration. We hope to partner with people in our region to make this a better place and make these better institutions. So I certainly hope that's the case. I would say
that's wonderful. That's powerful stuff. How has the work of the CIC evolved? The way you do business? Obviously, technology is a game changer in a lot of areas, but how did CIC does business evolved over, say, the last 10 years?
Yeah, I'd say we're more sophisticated and we have greater impact in our collaborations. I think we've moved and grown from a place where we were sharing information together, being helpful to one another, sharing best practices, to actually now in a place where we co-invest and trust one another to really be significant partners in the delivery of core services on the campuses. So very specifically, for example, we teach over 100 less commonly taught languages, and the most any campus teaches is about 30. But in order to share those effectively, you have to trust that the other institution is going to teach the language in the way you expect, so at a level of quality that you expect from your own institution, and you have to trust that they will continue to provide that course for you, even though they're in another state or, have another governing board. So again, we've gone from being friends and family, I think, to being deep collaborators, and that's happened over 10 years, probably 15, and I think it's just like any relationship you're building. Every day you build trust. I mean, you're either building it up or you're destroying things, right? And every day over this time, our institutions have built up toward a very, very high level of collaboration that I think is really paying off in big ways now. And it will never end. We'll always be striving to be better. It's like democracy. Yeah, it's a lot of fun and great institution.
Well, it's been an absolute joy having you on. I very much appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to help spread a little good news, and thank you for being a kind voice out there. I think it's a wonderful service.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Have a terrific night. And that does it for this episode of A Kind Voice on Employment, Opportunity, and Innovation. We're going to close out with a song from Joshua Rich about making a kind choice and using your kind voice. And I hope you all make a kind choice. Have a great night, everybody.
Here in our garden, we gather to share all that's inside of us, how much we care. Find strength in our differences and reach common ground. Celebrate our unity in a tapestry of loving sound. So make a kind choice with your kind voice, and united we'll find our kind voices inside, which sing out in unity, creating community and bringing us together as one. Some of us make movies, some of us sing songs, some find forgiveness for a choice that was wrong. Some of us feed children, some help people in need. And all of us in our own way are planting a loving seed. When we make a kind choice with our kind voice, and united we find our kind voices inside, which sing out in unity, creating community and bringing us together as one. And each moment brings on changes, and each change helps us to see that we're all of us a part of our sweet humanity. And we each bring something special as we cultivate our soul, while the kindness home.